Welcome to The Fast Track, the podcast that gets Kiwis into their first home faster, brought to you by Aera. I'm Derek, the founder of Aera, and today I'm joined by one of our first home finders, Laura. Hi, Laura. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Derek. Thank you for having me.
It's going to be super fun.
I know. I'm excited.
So you spend all your time chatting to, texting, messaging, visiting, seeing people who want to buy their first homes, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I talk to first-time buyers a lot, and obviously they have a lot of questions, a lot of concerns.
And we thought it'd be fun to bring like the top 10 questions or whatever that they constantly giving you about Aera, about the market, about how to get into a home, into this podcast, and kind of dive into each of them.
Yeah, no, that sounds fun.
What should we start with?
Should we start with my favorite one?
Yes.
Is Aera a scam?
Is it?
Well, I don't think so, but let's talk
So
about it a
people
bit
actually
more.
ask you this question.
People, they don't ask it as a question, but 10 minutes into a conversation, I get a comment, "Oh, I thought you guys were a scam."
Right. So
Yes.
in the back of their minds, they're wondering, how can it be so good, right?
I don't think it's normal in our industry to give money away.
That's true. And also the fact that I guess we help them with such like pure intent from the beginning to the end, right? So when you kind of go into that conversation with them, like what's your response? How do you explain it?
I mean, it's quite cool that they trust me enough to ask me that. But the way I explain it to them is that we are genuinely a purpose-driven company, and there is a lot of money to be made when you are helping someone buy a house in lending and insurance, obviously in developers' fees. So when you add all that up, it's quite fair actually to share up to 10K with a client and we still make a margin.
100%. I think that's the thing that most people don't realize, that in every transaction, there is actually a disproportionate, in our view, amount of money that is made by lots of different parties. So part of the Aera ethos is like to do whatever we can to, I guess, level the playing field and be more in the buyer's corner. So when we bring everything under one roof, which is what we're doing from the beginning to end, it means that we can have the opportunity to share more with them, right? And as a technology company, which is where we're rapidly heading towards with the app and with the AI coach, we're also able to help hundreds and thousands of people much more cost effectively than the way the industry currently does it, which means it'll cost us heaps less to find those people, coach them, nurture them, all the things they can do in the app, than what is currently done in the industry, which is also why there's such a high cost structure. You know what I mean? Do you ever explain that to them as well?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it goes back to our values and why we exist, right? We really are there for first home buyers because, like you said, it's a little bit unfair to expect someone to save up while they're paying rent. So in New Zealand, it is really tough for first home buyers. So our 10K can save, a year or two in their journey and can get them into their first home faster, which is our mission.
Yeah. So they do understand that we do make money because, another question you get asked is...
Yeah, exactly. Second one is, what's in it for you guys?
Right, which is so weird because they think they would do it for free.
Yeah.
Like, why would someone do this for free? Because it makes you more suspicious, right?
Exactly.
So just to be clear, like we can make money from helping them get the lending. We can make money from helping them get insurance. And obviously, if we're helping them find a new home, then the developers that we work with can also, pay us a fee. So, and we're all pretty transparent in all of that too.
I still think it's important to let our members know that we do end up making less money, but this is our value. This is one of our values. This is why we're in the business, that we are ready to take that sacrifice, but to be in our members' corner, to be on their team.
Cool. So let's go to another one. You have got...
Another question that I get is, does Aera help with lending or just the house part? I think some of our members don't realize that we also help them with a mortgage.
Yeah. So they might think we're just trying to find them a house, or some of them might think that we're just getting them a mortgage but can't find them a house.
Exactly.
But what's important for you to communicate and what's important for them to understand is basically whatever they're going to need that we can help them with, right? So the lending part for us actually goes hand in hand with finding the house. And again, it's one of the reasons why we're building this company. If you separate them out, you don't quite know exactly what you're able to afford and what changes you could make to afford something different. And if you're just looking at house prices and on the internet or listings websites or just working with real estate agents, you're detached from what's actually in your control about what's possible from a purchase perspective. So what we've found fascinating is when the two are in tandem, when the mortgage coach is in tandem with the first home finder and the first home coach, they can design a strategy that actually works for someone, right? And that's really interesting that, again, I don't think many people experience.
Exactly. And what it means is that our members can get to us at whatever stage of the journey they are and will meet us there, whether it's they're ready for lending, they need to figure out some savings, or they're ready to jump on a house tour.
And the mortgage coach, the other key thing about this is, and again, most people don't realize, is there are so many levers to be able to find what kind of home price is going to suit somebody. And those levers could include things like, well, you don't have the savings right now, but by the time this particular house is built in 9 months, you will.
Exactly. Or you don't have the serviceability, but if you add a border, then you get there.
Exactly. And so when you've got the two things together, answering that question about do you just do the lending, do you just do the house, the magic of doing them both at the same time is what unlocks all of these opportunities that people wouldn't be able to figure out on their own.
Yeah, we don't just tell you this is how much you can afford. We say, how do we get you to this house? And then we help you get there. Our next question is, why buy a brand new home instead of an existing? I think there is a bit of an idea in New Zealand that new builds are these boxes that all look the same, don't have any land, and a better idea is to buy an existing home, do a bit of work on it, raise some value, and you're off to the races.
So I think about a third of first home buyers buy a brand new home, or 30 to 40%. So obviously a significant amount of them across the country do. The idea of buying a brand new home has a lot of benefits. Of course, a lot of people also buy an existing home. So why don't we break it up into two? Why do we advocate the brand new as our kind of primary strategy? And what are the kind of pros about it that you talk to people about? And what are some of the pushback that you get?
Going back to our ethos, getting Kiwis into their first homes faster. So with brand new home, you only need a 10% deposit, which means that you can get there twice as fast. This is why we advocate for new builds. The other reason why we do that is older homes normally require more maintenance, more repairs. The roof might be leaky. With new builds, that's not going to happen, which means that first of all, your cash flow is going to be better. You're not going to be spending that money on repairs. And secondly, the banks may lend you a bit more money because they know that there are less costs associated with owning a new home. Now, some of the comments that I get is, I don't want a box, they all look the same, or I don't get as much land, and land is actually what appreciates, right? So what would you say to that?
Well, I think it depends where you are in the country, right? So we have one of our team in Christchurch, and we've done a bunch of first homes in Waikato and other areas around the North Island where you are getting that, right? So that question around townhouses is really an Auckland-centric question. Obviously, there's a lot of people in Auckland, but there's also a lot of people in the rest of the country. So the townhouse question is quite genuine in Auckland, that yes, if you're going to spend 600 or 650, then that's probably what you're going to get. But most people don't even realize they can buy anything for 650. So it opens up this whole opportunity that, well, actually, would you rather have something now, or would you rather continue trying to save and get a piece of land which might cost you $1 million, but you might be getting in 10 years? So that's back to the ethos of getting there faster, right? The other thing is, you've mentioned about simplicity of ownership, the guarantees, the warranties, less costs. Those are all really important. The other thing that's really valuable from buying a first home perspective is you kind of know what the price is. And in Auckland and in New Zealand, it's very challenging on the existing market because it's very opaque what the price is going to be. And it can change depending on who else is involved. If there's another buyer, or if there's an auction, or there's another bidder, the price will move. Whereas in a brand new home, it's like going into a shop and there's a price. So we try to remove all the moving parts, as many as possible, so it's simpler for someone to go from A to B. And then in a few years, they can always upgrade. And, that's another reason. But I think, obviously, a lot of Kiwis want to buy an existing home. There's nothing wrong with it. And many of our customers do, even if we just help them with the lending. There's, I guess, pros and cons to all of that. But as you've said, it becomes a time suck and a money suck. And it's just really a question of whether that's something someone wants to do with their lives at this point.
Exactly. And I think it's important to zoom out and say, oftentimes, it's not the choice between an existing home or a new home. It's the choice between a new home and no home at all. Because oftentimes, you actually can't afford an existing home.
Exactly. The other thing about them, though, is when you go in there, and we obviously help lots of Kiwis get the existing home, but it takes them forever. Some of our customers have taken almost a year because they go again and again and again. They lose out. The building inspection disappoints them. They find out something about the house that doesn't satisfy the bank, for example, if there's an error if there's issues with the building. But it doesn't satisfy themselves because they've realized, I'm going to have to spend 50 or 100 grand on fixing up this house. Or they lose out because someone else has bought it. So on average, when someone's buying an existing home with us, it's definitely be between 6 to 12 months just to even find the house, which again is very stressful. And in a normal market, that price will keep rising and continually compound the stress, whereas brand new homes don't have that. So there's heaps of pros and cons, but if you have the luxury and you've got time and you've got all the energy and you want to spend all your weekends, renovating a home, and there is value to be added if you do that correctly, but there's also a black hole and a black money pit if you don't, so there's kind of these double-edged swords. What's another question you keep getting?
So another question I get is, how much do I actually need for a deposit?
And what do you tell people?
I tell people that generally for owner-occupied, you need 20%, but obviously for new builds, you only need 10%. So,
right.
Loophole.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty accurate. But the interesting thing about how we work with people at Aera is we can start getting them into a home where they've got 7 or 8%, because it could be something that's finished in a time where they'd have eventually saved up the 10, and explaining that to the bank is part of the process. There are situations where you can come in with 5% if you earn under a certain amount of money, where the government will kind of underwrite, your ability to have that deposit, but you end up paying a slightly more interest rate and those kinds of things, or some fees. But it's a wider range than I think a lot of people think, and most people in their minds think 20%, $1 million house, I need 200,000. And the real thing as well, if you're buying something for 650 or 7, you maybe only need 70. And if you have 60 today, then you could start.
That's exactly right. And we also have to remember that Aera adds up to $10,000. So that really could be your missing piece. So we really encourage, wherever you are in the journey, talk to us, because you may very well be way closer than you think.
Yeah, I think most people are. So we've got a couple more questions.
Next one is, can I use my KiwiSaver, and how does it even work?
Right. So actually, most people who buy their first home use all of their KiwiSaver. It's pretty rare that we see someone in our group of members that doesn't tap into their KiwiSaver. In fact, they almost drain the entire thing, mostly. You can drain it all the way down to $1,000 or something like that. So couple things. One, you must have been contributing for 3 years. That's the main factor. And then 2, once you get to the finish line, you just have to make sure it's okay in your contract with the builder or the seller of the house that you've got extra time to get the KiwiSaver money from the KiwiSaver fund, and your lawyer facilitates that. So whatever money you've got at the finish line when you're buying a house, you can draw almost all of it out, and that becomes the deposit.
And that's also why it's important to work with a team that works with first-time buyers and brand new homes. Like, we have a lawyer that we recommend that knows what clauses to put in. So whatever lawyer you're working with, you have to make sure they know what they're doing in your situation.
Yeah, 100%, because if you get into a contract and you haven't acknowledged or put in there something around the KiwiSaver piece, they're going to want you to produce a deposit pretty quickly, and it's going to be sooner than how long it takes to get your KiwiSaver out.
Yeah.
And for example, if you went to an auction and you won it, let's say, and you need to pay basically the next day, if you didn't, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So there are little mechanics that you need to be aware of. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple, but as long as you've got the team.
Like a week or so to withdraw it and things like that.
Yeah. What else?
Cool. Another question I get is, do I talk to Aera first or the bank first?
That's a great question, because we often have people who have tried to talk to the bank, and the bank is like a computer, and it either says yes or no.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any nuance, it doesn't have any flexibility, and it doesn't give you any feedback or advice on if you did this, this, or that, it will be or could be a yes. So the machine now that the bank is, basically it goes in and it spits out an answer. And so if it spits out an answer that's no, it's so blunt that it doesn't even say it's no, but if your budget was X, it would be yes. So it's,
or if you just paid off 5K of your
exactly.
Of your debt,
it could be something so tiny, like if you just closed this credit card, it could be yes. So we think it's just a waste of time, because also spending all that time with one bank, not knowing what the answer is going to be, and when you get the answer, and if it's a no, you've got no idea of what to do next. Whereas if you're working with Aera or a coach that can kind of map out what is the best strategy to present to the bank, is fundamentally better, because you can then figure out, actually, I've got to build a case that targets the goal that I want, which is a house of this price. And that's actually how banks work. I think maybe most people think it's just like there's a formula and you put it in and it comes out, which is true. But if you don't know what the formula is, then you can't build your case to say, actually, this is why I'm a good person you should lend money to on this basis, and I'm going to do these things to satisfy your needs. So we would always say you'd want to be talking to someone who can guide you through that process. I mean, you've seen how useful that is, right? And how nuanced it is.
Exactly. And it also can be very discouraging when you get a no from a bank because you don't know what to do with that information. I've had members tell me, you are the first person that gave me hope because they've spoken to the bank, they've been through that whole spiel, they've got all their documents in order, they did their homework, and they got a no, and they just thought that they can never afford a house now. So
Yeah.
when you talk to them and you tell them, actually, it's a no now, but in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year, if you follow this plan, you could buy a house. That's really hopeful, right? And when you're on such an overwhelming and big journey of buying a house, you really want to hear as little no's as possible
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
keep going because
Yeah.
we recognize at Aera that it's a big task. We want to make sure that you don't get discouraged on the way and you keep going.
100%. And we can end this podcast with a story of, one such member, David, who had been told no by Kiwi Bank. And within 11 days from joining Aera, downloading the app, doing some of the learning blocks, chatting to a coach, he had bought a home.
That's
right?
amazing.
So
what changes did he need to make to make that happen?
a couple of things on what was going on with his debt and his credit cards and stuff, and basically changing his target budget.
Wow.
Right. So
That's all it took.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Exactly. So that's it. That's been awesome. Thanks very much for joining us for the Fast Track today. If you liked this episode, be sure to send it to a friend, subscribe, follow us on socials. If you haven't yet, download the app. The Aera app is basically your first home school and co-pilot to get you into first home faster. I'm Derek, the founder of Aera. Thank you.